we will end this episode with a Indiana Hoosiers football predictions. Cody and I are going to do this for all of the college football programs before the season starts. We will have either Purdue or Notre Dame the next time that we have a show.
Notre Dame will be next because this is something that just for you all. So I already have recorded at this point. I've had somebody on, a reporter who covers IU football. I've already had him on. It was a great conversation. That'll be posted sometime later this week. So we're going to do the Indiana prediction schedule here. For this one, I'm having a person for Notre Dame coming on Tuesday, and then we'll finish with the Purdue Boilermakers after that. And then we'll probably have a Colts one after that as well. Just a little bit of foresight into what's coming down the pipeline here for you all. But yeah, that's kind of how we're doing it, Derek. We'll do IU this week, Notre Dame next week, and then we will move on and finish with the Boilers here for college football and then go from there.
Okay, so just to make it short and sweet, I think Cody and I have both stated that we believe that Indiana will be 11-1. Basically, not an undefeated season. I'm sorry, IU fans. It's very hard to do. And, Indiana, Cody, to their credit, they're having to replace a lot, right? You're replacing a Heisman Trophy quarterback. You're replacing your number one running back. You're replacing two of your top wide receivers. You're replacing at least one offensive lineman. I can't remember if it was two or not, but they're replacing that. You're replacing your top tight end. And you have a couple of defensive players, one lineman, your best linebacker, and your best corner is also gone. So, that's a lot to lose for a university like Indiana, right? Not saying that Curt Cignetti and all these other things are not going to keep them in contention. Obviously, if Indiana goes 11-1, they will still be in contention for the college football playoff, which I think Cody and I both will sit here and argue that it's almost a definite. And I think it's almost definite here too, Cody, because really Indiana's schedule is not really that difficult. There are a couple of opponents here, but let's break it down real quick because we'll discuss who we think could be their losses. First game at home against North Texas. North Texas last year was actually ranked inside the top 25. North Texas had one of the best offenses in college football last year. Now, they did lose a couple people from that, and I do not expect them to return to that. Cody and I both assume that will be a win, especially being at home against a well-coached team like Indiana. You will then play Howard. Don't even know where that school is located. So, at home once again. And what do you know, Cody? Another home game. You're going to be playing Western Kentucky University the week after that. So 3 straight games. Oh, and what's that? 4 straight games for the Indiana Hoosiers at home to start out the year. And you play Northwestern, who is right now fighting with Purdue for the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the Big Ten right now. So, Indiana has 4 straight games, Cody, at home against teams that North Texas is going to be your best opponent and likely won't be a top 25 program again this year. It couldn't start out much easier for Indiana if you tried.
Not really. No, especially at home. Like, you're not even traveling. Yeah. It's a pretty awesome schedule if you're an IU fan to start. You feel pretty good about that. Like, you're getting off to a pretty strong start. It's really like a warm-up for some of those games that are coming down the line there. So, yeah. Nothing really that scares me there. I think we can agree they're pretty much all going to be blowouts at that point. Like, it's going to be a reality.
It would be shocking to me if they weren't.
It would be shocking.
And then you start to look here, and then they got they're on the road against Rutgers. Again, I love Rutgers. Rutgers is always a team in the Big Ten, Cody, that once in a blue moon, they come very close to upsetting somebody that they shouldn't. I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen to Indiana, but that Rutgers does that to some people, especially when you're on the road. So you have Rutgers again. You and I both said would be wins. On the road again to take on Nebraska. Again, some people think Nebraska is going to turn the tide this year. I don't really think so.
I mean, how many years have we heard that at this point?
Yeah, I know. We hear it every year. Everyone's just like wanting Nebraska to return back to the 1995 glory days. And I'm like, why? I'm not saying why, but how? How? Matt Rule is not going to change the program there. If he hasn't already, I don't think that he is going to. So we have that as a win. So again, Indiana will be 6-0 going into their biggest matchup of the season, quite possibly of their entire year, and that is against Ohio State, who comes into town to take them on. Now, this is the first one where Cody and I had a disagreement. Cody suggested that Indiana will win this game.
Yes.
I suggested that Ohio State will win this game. I think that even last year, Ohio State, I think on paper, had a better team than Indiana did. Clearly, the moment was too big for Julian Sayin in that moment and the offensive line at points. But I think this year, with a year improved Julian Sayin, who was already one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football history, mixed with basically 4 of your 5 offensive linemen returning, that is going to play a big part in it. Yes, you lost Carnell Tate, but you still have the best wide receiver in Jeremiah Smith on that team. You still got weapons. And albeit we won't have the number 1 defense in college football this year, but this defense for Ohio State will still be knocking on the door of a top 10 defense. So this is still going to be a very elite football team and 2 teams that very likely will be competing in the college football playoff. Now, Cody, you heard my opinion as to why I think Ohio State can win this game. Why do you believe that Indiana will win this game?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's because it's an IU home game. Like, that's just something where the home field advantage is, I feel like these teams are very even.
That's the first time in IU's history that has ever been said.
Not right. I know, right? But it's the reality, right? And that's what we have to come to terms with is that, yeah, I mean, it's a home game for IU. And if it was in Ohio State, if it was at, Columbus, I might have a different opinion. But I just think the home field advantage, it's real and it matters. I mean, you'll probably see a lot of Buckeye fans there. It's not that far of a drive. So maybe it's not as much of a home game there. But still, I do think that the home field advantage is something for sure. And also, like you said, yes, Indiana's lost some pieces, but Ohio State's also lost some pieces on defense, right?
Yes,
so I think we could definitely see Indiana start to do some stuff. It was a defensive battle that we saw, for Indiana there, but Indiana, Ohio State, and obviously the first matchup they had last year. So yeah, I definitely think it could be maybe a little bit more of a high scoring affair here for this one. Like you said, another year, Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith still there, but I do think that IU does still have some really good pieces offensively that they could also be very competitive. So I definitely think, for me, that's why I'm probably going to go with IU, just because I think there are some ways that IU can take advantage of that. If the Buckeyes were having the same defense and another year Julian Sayin, I would understand that too, why you'd pick Ohio State. But I think for me, it's just the fact that every year, college football programs, you lose guys, right? You just lose players to the draft or whatever, to transfer portal, all that stuff. But I do feel like both these programs are more than capable of replacing those guys. And so, even though those are losses, obviously, I do view IU in that same vein of they can replace it just like Ohio State can replace their guys they lost on defense. So that's kind of where I'm at, where it's I do think it will even itself out here.
Okay. Interesting enough. I mean, that's fine. Again, I just think for that perspective, IU just won't really be battle tested going into that game. Obviously, Cignetti knows everything about it, but I mean, at that point, the only real contest that Indiana's going to have up to that point is the week before that, and that's against Nebraska. So, I mean, being at home certainly makes it a big deal. certainly will probably be the biggest matchup of the week when it comes to that. I wouldn't be surprised if I doubt that College Game Day will end up there, but who knows? That's actually the week after I get married too. So good job, Ohio State and Indiana, for not putting the game on my wedding day. Thank you very much. Anyways, the next game. This is where you had the loss for Indiana against Michigan being on the road. Please explain that one to me.
Okay. Well, so I kind of view it as like, you know how you viewed like they may not be battle tested against Ohio State. I kind of viewed it as like it's two, heavyweights going to battle here. And it's something where I feel like, man, like IU coming off a big victory. You're traveling to Michigan. Michigan's an underrated team. Like a lot of people write them off, but they're still a very talented squad themselves. So I definitely could see this. I mean, they didn't play each other last year. So this is something where I viewed this as like, hey, like they haven't really faced each other, so they don't really have that history as much. I think they faced in 24, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a game where Michigan, pretty much were controlling that game, and then I think at the end something happened. I think IU won that game or something, but I do think it's something where it's a tough battle, and they're coming off of that, and they're going right into another really tough matchup here, and I don't know. I guess that's just kind of where my logic goes is like, it's hard enough to win. And especially against a team like Ohio State, like I feel like they're going to be a little bit worn down, maybe a little bit from that battle. So that's kind of maybe why I got it there. But who knows, man? Like, I think it will be a good game. Like, I think it could be, even if Michigan, isn't great, it could be like another Penn State situation from last year where they still have the talent. Like it's still there and it's very obvious. Right. So that's where I'm going with it is I just think that could be something where a lot of people are saying, oh, it's just Michigan. But, Michigan, new coach, we don't know what Michigan's going to be like this year. So I could see them kind of having a rebound year in that way and actually being a little bit more formidable than some people are thinking. So that's kind of my logic with it there. But, I mean, I could go either way, man. Like, I could see either of these games going either way. Like, I could see IU losing a tough matchup to Ohio State and then coming just laying the wood against Michigan. Like I could really see that being the case too. It almost feels disrespectful to say like they lose because of what they did last year. But
well, I mean, everybody has to lose at some point. As great as Cignetti has been through the first 2 years with IU, remember he did lose to Ohio State that first year, and they did lose to Notre Dame. Obviously, Cignetti has figured out a winning formula there. And, I do think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to suffer a really tough loss against Ohio State. I think it'll be a close game, but I think they're just going to come up a little short. And the one thing about a great coach is that very rarely do teams with great coaches lose 2 games in a row. It very rarely happens. And Cignetti, I do not think is going to allow that to happen, especially because I don't like the state of the Michigan program right now. You do have a new head coach coming in. We will have to see how he does with it. But, I mean, Cody, you just have Bryce Underwood that just came out on a podcast the other day talking about the game, Ohio State versus the team up north. And he said, basically, it's just another game with guys in different colors. And when you say that lets you know that quarterback doesn't treat that very well. He's not treating it properly. And that is not a good thing for a young quarterback like Bryce Underwood, who clearly underperformed last year from what everyone was expecting. Because ultimately, Michigan is going to be only as good as Bryce Underwood is. Right. And Bryce Underwood was not good last year. I don't care what anyone tells you. He was not good last year. That is the most overhyped freshman year that I've ever seen in my life. And he's going to have to make a drastic difference this year to be good. And I don't think that he's going to, even if they're at home, against Indiana, against a team that is so well disciplined and so well coached under Cignetti, I think is just going to make life hell for Bryce Underwood and what they did. I mean, you saw what Ohio State's defense did to Bryce Underwood. I mean, he was completely outmatched. Do I think Indiana will do the same thing? Not necessarily, but something pretty doggone close. So I do think Indiana will win that one and will win out the remainder of their schedule, which they actually have a home game next against Minnesota. They have that one. They go on a bye week, and then they play USC at home. Don't expect Cignetti to lose off of a bye. On the road against Washington, could be one to watch. Washington is a very tough place to play. It very much is. And, for a team like Indiana that's going to have a lot of new pieces, it's going to be tough. But the good thing for Indiana, though, is at the end of the year, that team's going to finally be gluing together a little bit more. So it's a little bit less of a concern at that point. And then they get to finish out their year by playing the other school in state against Purdue. And I think we all know that's a slack and waiting to happen. So, it's really, I mean, you and I both have this team going at 11-1, fighting for a chance at a Big Ten championship once again. I think it's going to just come down to what Ohio State does and what Oregon does. I haven't looked at Oregon's schedule too much, but I know what Ohio State's schedule looks like. And I don't know how Ohio State's going to do this year. I mean, Cody, they have 7 games this year where they realistically will face teams that could be in the top 25, and 3 of those are going to be easy top 10s. Wow. Like Indiana, Oregon, and Texas. All 3 of those teams are going to be playing in the college football playoff this year for the most part. So, I mean, and then there's more teams on top of that could be ranked. So, I mean, Ohio State's got a tough road ahead of them this year. Oregon, I don't think has that. So there could very well be a possibility that Indiana is facing Oregon in the Big Ten championship game this year if they do, in fact, go 11-1 and a team like Ohio State drops more than 1 game. So definitely interesting there, but 11-1, I think that a lot of Hoosier fans would accept that with another chance at a national championship. You can't really argue too much with that.